So good afternoon, ladies. So this is the third podcast in our series. And today we'll be discussing resilience in the workplace. And I'm with some of our esteemed career genie coaches. We have David Richardson, we have Megan Camucho, and we've got Claire Belmont. And joining me today also is one of my esteemed colleagues, Soniya Verma Dey. So guys, do you want to tell us a little bit about each of you? Who wants to go first? David, why don't you start with the introduction?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be with you all. As always, this is the second podcast that I've been part of. I did one on emotional intelligence not so long ago, so it's really good to be working with you again. Yeah, my name is David Richardson. I'm one of the Genies Career Hub coaches. So a background as a qualified teacher, trainer, coach, specialism in career development, exec coaching. 21 years next week of running my own business, which is a bit of an anniversary, a bit of an event next week. So celebrations planned. So, and I was thinking about my intro and I thought, well, 21 years has brought, I'm not sure, 2 or 3 recessions and the small case of a pandemic. So here we are, 21 years later. So there's a small matter of resilience that's been needed during that time. As I think, irrespective of recessions, pandemics, just to run a business, to be profitable in business, to be successful in business demands those things. So I think there's something in that to be explored and to discuss. I think my specialisms are very much in the areas of sort of leadership development and coaching, and also I think working with people to sort of aspire to be what they can be and to be the very best they can be. And I do that in a variety of ways through training, coaching. I also use a wide variety of sort of psychometric instruments as well, which emotional intelligence profiling and resilience profiling is part of, really. That's really all I want to say about myself. There'll be lots of opportunities to find out more, so I'm going to hand over to someone else now to speak.
Lovely, David. Thank you very much for that lovely warm introduction and a bit about your background and your expertise today. That's fantastic. That's quite a milestone as well.
Yeah.
And Claire, over to you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, how you work in your coaching practice?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Claire Belmont. I'm based in Glastonbury in the UK. Only realistically a few months of the year because I'm a digital nomad and I travel all over the place as well. I'm a holistic mindset coach, which applies very much to your entire life, but very, very much in terms of career growth and business development. My background is with JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, doing top talent and leadership program development. And I left 12 years ago to begin my own coaching practice. And I've been a development coach ever since for the last 12 years. Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said, but similarly, I'll leave it there. And yeah, I just love being part of this crew as well. And resilience in the workplace is huge because, as David says, it takes some balls to run our own business, to leave the corporate world, to stay in it, to be committed and to do what we love and to do what we're passionate about. That really takes some resilience. So yeah, we're steeped in experience in here, I feel.
Absolutely, Claire. That was amazing. Megan, last but by no means least, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. So yeah, certainly it seems like we've all demonstrated resilience in our own life, which is probably why we're so keen to talk about it today. So I'm based in London, originally from the US, but I moved over to the UK almost 20 years ago now in 2007. So that certainly required a lot of resilience, changing countries, changing industries. I went from a PR and media background, working in Los Angeles in the music business, and transferred to a law firm in London, working in learning and development. So did a whole 180 with my life. And that certainly has required a lot of resilience over the last almost 20 years. I became a career and coach around 12, 13 years ago now. My background is, after the law firm, mostly corporate and professional services, so Goldman Sachs, Barclays, KPMG, and also spent 5 years at Imperial College Business School. So I really love both sides of the career spectrum, both the early careers and graduate side, but I do a lot with leadership development as well, because what I found with my experience was that many people are promoted into positions of leadership without very much support, and which affects their resilience, affects their ability to lead, affects their skills to be able to engage and motivate their teams. So I also have a program that I focus on leadership development as well, and do one-to-one coaching. I've been kind of a solopreneur on independent freelancer for the last 3 years now, but before that it was kind of 20 years in corporate. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's fantastic, Megan. Thank you very much. And also joining us today is Soniya Verma Dey, who's our esteemed marketing manager. Soniya, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Obviously, you're coming in, helping me with obviously this lovely coaching podcast today.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I'm Soniya Verma Dey. I have a background in food science and clinical nutrition. So I come from a platform where I have been a lifestyle coach earlier, but currently I have joined Orla as a marketing intern for Genies Career Hub. And I'm really happy to be a part of this podcast today so that I can hear myself about the resilience at workplace and how we can actually, deal with it. So thank you so much for it.
Oh, thank you, Soniya. And I'm Orla Smith, the CEO and founder of the Career Genies and the new platform, the Genies Career Hub. It's been a very impactful last 5 or 6 years since the vision, and I think we're finally getting off the ground and we're starting to make some impact. So I'm hoping with you lovely coaches beside me at my helm that you'll be able to do wondrous things for both your own coaching practices and obviously as an integral part of the Genies Career Hub and what we all hope it will become very, very soon. So I think let's crack on and talk about the subject at hand, which is resilience. So I wanted to kind of take this, that we would go through some questions around your coaching practice, really. And it was to kind of see how you guys handle, I suppose, your coachees within this kind of setting, within the kind of the whole kind of resilience kind of thing. So if we start with Claire, if you want to give us an insight into how you would mentor and coach, coachees or organizations or corporates that you would deal with, and how you would deal with the whole topic of resilience in the workplace. We'll start there.
Yeah, totally. I really love this topic, actually, because I think resilience for me is sometimes misunderstood. It's resilience. People kind of think, it's overcoming adversity or it's toughing it out in some ways. And in actual fact, it's not all about that. Resilience isn't always about coming through tough times. It can also be, coming from my perspective and the mindset perspective, is I do a lot of reframing. I do a lot of self-awareness work, self-inquiry work. Why am I feeling this way? How can I change my thoughts around that? So my thoughts around resilience is often based around, look how far you have already come. Look at all the things you have already done. And so I would work on celebrating small wins, looking back over your career on all of the things that you have already achieved. Wow. There would have been moments in your life, in your career, where you thought, I can't. But you know that what resilience is for me is there's no such thing as can't. My grandma used to tell me this, and I'm like, oh, Nana, she was right. There is no such thing as can't. And I think Yoda said something about there is no try. There is only do or do not. There is no try. And so resilience for me is all about that. It's reframing it, looking at how strong you already are, how courageous you already are. As human beings, we often forget, particularly in the career trajectory, we're very much in our logical thinking brain. Because we need to prospect, we need to research, all of those things. And we forget to be, and we forget to remember how amazing we are. And in that remembering of how amazing we are, then we're able to build the confidence and the esteem to move forward more. So for me, it's a lot around self-inquiry and congratulating, celebrating the small wins, which is awkward and uncomfortable as well, That's an awkward and uncomfortable practice in itself. And those practices are very important in career growth. It's awkward and uncomfortable. All relationships are awkward and uncomfortable. We're going to sit next to people that are awkward and uncomfortable. That's a fact. And resilience is acceptance, knowing I can do it, going through it anyway, feeling the anxiety, going through it anyway. That's resilience and exercising that muscle for me. Yeah.
No, it's really, really good. That's really powerful, Claire. And I think it's something we should be doing in all of our lives individually and even within the workplace as well, but great methodologies to bring into the workplace, I think. David, what are your thoughts on that? How do you?
Yeah, I echo that. I think for me, I always take an individual approach. So in a one-to-one context, I'll always work with a person like Claire on the sort of self-awareness piece, really. I do quite a lot of personality profiling, so I use various tools. One I use probably the most frequently and related to this is the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which gives that sort of sense of where's a person's starting point, what are they going to be more prone to, where are their sort of key attributes and things. And I think that what that does is give a sense of every coaching piece is going to be different anyway, because that person's, what they may find difficult, another person may find straightforward. So I think you've got to work individually. It's different, completely different in a team coaching context, because you're trying to get a sense of how that team is operating. But even then, I would still work with an encouragement to encourage people to bring their individual profiles, if that's the right word, and share those so that people can start to understand more about. And as you said, Claire, I like the idea of feeling uncomfortable more than you feel comfortable, because I remember someone said to me once about emotional intelligence development. He said, when people ask what you do, you say, well, that's all the soft and fluffy stuff, isn't it? I said, well, no, it's not actually. That's the perception.
Yeah.
Actually, if you go on this journey, you're probably going to feel out of your depth, uncomfortable far more than you are. And I love that David Bowie line where he talks about his pursuit of artistic development. He says, as soon as you start to feel comfortable, just take another step. When you can't feel your feet touching the bottom of the pool or the sea, that's where you're in the space where you are developing. And I use that quote quite a lot.
It's true.
And I think that's what this is about, really. Some people will want to share, some people won't, but that's in itself is revealing. So that's just a bit of a snapshot of an approach that I would take.
Thank you, David. That was really, really good. I really resonate with some of what you've said there, particularly the pieces about being uncomfortable, and obviously not feeling your feet. And I think that is true. That is where true growth begins, is when something is no longer a challenge and you're finding it too easy. So getting out of your comfort zone and exploring the unknown is really, 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 really impactful. What about you, Megan? Do you want to give us your insight?
Yes. So something that was sticking out to me as Claire and David were talking is how there's a lot of things that come up in resilience around people's feelings and emotions. And something I've noticed with my clients is that they often take those emotions and feelings as a signal that it's wrong. So if they're worried or they're anxious or they're feeling nervous, when actually what we know from research and from positive psychology and neuroscience is that this is simply our brain indicating that we're doing something that we're not familiar with or that we haven't done before, but it doesn't mean that we can't do it or that it's impossible. And so I really like to normalize those feelings and emotions. Let's recognize them with our clients. Let's say it's okay to feel that way, because it's what makes us human. We're not robots. We can't go through life numbing ourselves, but that they need to understand that is okay to have those feelings, and that's not a bad thing. What you want to do is understand and identify, why am I feeling nervous? Is it because I haven't done it before? Is it because I have done it before and maybe it went wrong? Well, then let's reflect on, what did you learn from that experience and how can you strengthen that and do it better the next time? Or do you have some kind of proof? Do you have proof that you can't do it? Because usually we don't have proof. It's just, it's our heads and our emotions getting in the way. And we may also be able to look around us and say, I have proof that somebody else did it. So if they did it, why can't I do it too? So I really like to focus on those types of things, turning those emotions and feelings into more of a powerful thing for people to recognize versus feeling like it's a negative thing.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. Have we any thoughts on what anybody have said, and we'll kind of try and move on?
Just think it's interesting hearing colleagues talk about approaches, because you often feel a little bit in a vacuum with these things, and your way, you feel that this is the right way, but you need to get that validation, and you need to hear those different perspectives. So just for 5 minutes hearing other people, it validates the approach, but also gives you a different line of inquiry. You think, oh, that's interesting what Megan said. That's really interesting what Claire's added. That's something I need to think more of, really. So that's development, isn't it? That's just being open to different ways of thinking, different ways of working. So just that exercise in its own right.
Yeah, I love that too. And just to iterate what you were saying, Megan, as well, that prompted me, like you just said, David, oh yeah, I remember that. Like having these techniques around what is proof, what is your assumption, like what's your assumption? This whole thing around resilience is I can't because I feel da-da-da. Okay, but what is fact here and what's assumption here? So I love what you were saying there around that the proof piece, Megan. Yeah, it's really, really powerful that when you can bring someone back in an instant. Like people think sometimes they need to go through a whole process, but actually when we're asking them, is that fact or is it assumption? That can be an instant, can't it? Yeah, I love it.
And you often get challenged by that. I have coachees and groups who will challenge that, and you say, well, where's the scientific basis for this? And that's a very good question. And and you say, well, it is subjective. What we're looking at is subjective here, but there's an increasing scientific base. But for me, that is a development area, because I feel I'm not a scientist. I don't consider myself a scientist. So that definitely does raise a question. And I'll have to be. I'm sure you're the same. You have to be prepared for that challenge, because it will come. It does come. And so audiences and coachees will receive and sort of consider this in different ways. I think we hit on a really important subject in almost everything we do, really, whether we're looking at resilience today, but when we're looking at anything which has this sort of subjective tone to it, then we are going to get asked those questions. So I think this is where this type of forum maybe opens up those lines of inquiry, and maybe we can help and support each other where we've got that. Megan, I'm going to be coming back to you after the saying, that'd be really interesting. Can you signpost me something I can read and refer to? Because that's really.
I think one of the questions I had for you all is kind of what inspired you to take this focus on, resilience in the workplace within your own coaching practices. Who wants to start off? Claire, do you want to give it a go?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, mine's for a lot of us, I think it is steeped in childhood. So mine is steeped in childhood. I was one of those Generation X, raised in a rough way, left home at 16, learned on the streets, all of those things. So resilience first came to me not through career growth, but through personal issues. And then through that, I got fascinated with post-traumatic growth, because it was a lot about post-traumatic stress, and I immediately wanted to flip it on its head and learn about post-traumatic growth. And the second big breakthrough for me was leaving corporate in 2012. Was that real moment of, it was like what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing still here? Why am I still here? On the one hand, and then in the other instant, it was not just what am I doing, but it was okay, what am I doing? Am I doing then? If I don't want to do this, what do I want to do? Because now
it's almost like an epiphany, was it, that you had?
Oh yeah. I think I think there's a lot to be said around these really big moments, big breakthrough moments of resilience as well. Of what do I want to do? What have I got in my toolkit now then? If I've come through 12 years of JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and all of that stuff behind me, that's the wind beneath my wings. Do you know what I mean? Like I've now built this great toolkit that I can pull out all of these skills and whatever from, and patch something together, surely. And so and so it continues. So I think there's big breakthrough moments like those, and then I think that there are incremental moments throughout our lives that strengthen us, and it goes back to the comfort zone again, coming out of the comfort zone. I live outside of my comfort zone on purpose now. I'm not a natural explorer, traveler by any means. I've got a bit of wanderlust, but I like to travel slow. I'm a bit of a homebody as well. So when I go traveling, I get an apartment and I stay at home. And I run my business, and I might go off and explore the area, but I'm interested in the local culture and just being at home. So, but I take myself out of my comfort zone to be in another culture. So otherwise I could easily be a hermit at home, and then I may be less resilient.
That's incredible. I love that. I love that whole digital nomad piece about you, Claire. Anyway, it's just so powerful, really is. And Megan, let's jump over to you. What do you think inspired your focus on building these kind of courses for your mentees and the corporate you deal with?
I think it was a variety of things. I was thinking while Claire was speaking about her growing up, and I was like, what did I do as a child? And I realized that I'm actually very stubborn, which comes in handy when you need to be resilient and you need to do things that are against the grain or kind of not what other people around you are doing. So I was like, you know what, it could be a bad quality, but actually it's quite a good quality at times too. And so I think that's one thing about resilience to me is like, you do have to be really stubborn. If you want to be, you have to like decide that you're going to get through it and you're going to push through it, and you're going to figure out why those things are happening and how you can learn and grow from them. So, and I definitely was like that as a child. No one in my family really has ever like left the US or moved abroad. And I remember even being 10, 12 years old saying one day I was going to move far away. I grew up in a very small little town in the middle of nowhere in Michigan. People don't even know where Michigan is most of the time. And I went to university. I said, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to move. And I moved 3,000 miles away to California. And then 3 years later, I moved 5,000 miles away to London. So I don't think my parents were really surprised about that. But other people were like, how did you let her go so far away? And they said, well, she's been telling us since she was 10 that she was leaving. So there's no way we were going to keep her. And so I think there's that aspect of like that mindset of you're stubborn, you know, you're going to try things. And I think also with resilience, you've got to be okay to try things and have it fail and not go the way you expected it to, and be able to reflect and learn from it. So again, I didn't have any connections to the corporate world. So the fact that I then went into places like Goldman Sachs and Barclays, I really had imposter syndrome. I was like, what am I doing here? I don't know how I got in these companies. Are they sure they hired the right person? So that was also a whole nother journey for me. And then I realized too, like as I progressed in my career, and I had companies behind me and people were saying, wow, how did you get into them? That actually there was also knowledge that I could share with people about what you can do to get there, what are the types of networking you can do, how do you handle rejection, because they may say no to you the first time and you have to go through a career journey and try again. So there was also that. So I think it's really those probably are the three main things that have inspired me with resilience. And then once I progressed into more senior roles and I was working for senior leaders, recognizing that they were not getting the support they needed and that they didn't always have the chance to develop those skills before they got put into those leadership positions. So they were then really struggling with their own emotions and their own resilience, and then having to manage teams and other people. And that really can be a sandstorm, I'll say. I'll keep it clean. It can really be a storm, right? An imperfect storm, a very messy storm. So it's really about helping people to, leverage those. They have the skills and they have the ability, they just aren't always aware of it and how to use it. So that's the other thing for me that really wanted to implement that into my leadership programs.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I really resonate with the fact of, the fact that you have to almost kind of try things and fail. Dust yourself off and go, okay, that didn't work. So we'll get up and we'll try something else. And that's really cool. I really kind of resonated with that. David, do you want to tell us a little bit of story about what inspired you?
It's great to hear all these stories.
It is, it's brilliant.
My script, I don't have a script anyway, but it's changed 3 times during these stories. And it always comes back to childhood, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think my resilience started when my careers teacher, Mr. Mason, who's a lovely guy, I was stood outside the classroom, was in the 5th year as it was, year 11 it is now, and he was handing out apprenticeship forms to all the lads in the row, and they were all for engineering apprenticeships. The girls weren't allowed to join the queue because it was engineering, so they were over in another line. And he walked down the line and he said, "Here you go, lads, these are great jobs, engineering apprenticeships." And he came to me. I was 15, spotty feet at 15 years old. And I said, "I don't want one of them." And he says, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "I don't want one." He said, "Well, why not?" I said, "Because I don't want to be an engineer." And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I thought that was your job to help me, you know." So it came very clear at a very early age that I wasn't going to follow the trend, shall we say.
Yeah.
And that sort of resilience to feel a little bit out on a limb, a little bit different, a little bit not sure. I had no idea what was it. I had no idea, really. You know, I knew I was a reasonable communicator. I could write, I could speak well, but that's it, really. It's all I knew. So the seeds of resilience were there because you had to sort of stand out a little bit, and then a sort of a long-standing sort of mixed career in what I do, and then music as well, trying to sort of be successful with music, which demands a lot of resilience, because most people say your stuff's rubbish, or it's not for them, or it's not the right time, and all that sort of rejection and all that sort of stuff. So resilience kicks in there. So all those things. And then I think I didn't really start thinking about it until I started working with clients and sort of helping them deal with, you know, not being successful with things, but what were degrees of success? What does that mean? How do we learn from things when they don't go well? You know, what do we take from that? So I think the clients that I've worked with now, and I've split them into 2 categories. The clients that I work with, sort of fire and rescue services, and wow, some of those people, the resilience that they demonstrate. Wow. I mean, it's extraordinary, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be working with the people, and we'll talk about the day before, and they've been on a shout, and you know, they've had to deal with a fatality, you know, and these things, and my issues pale into insignificance, you know. So there's a massive inspiration about that. And also working with creatives who I feel are having to deal in a world that doesn't necessarily always favour them, and the need to be successful, but to deal with rejection, to deal with being told no, and still carrying on, you know. And when I find my reading, what I read, a lot of autobiographies, and there's a constant thing about what impresses me. It's about people who keep going despite.
It's true, isn't it?
Just despite, just keep going. And success is very many different things. It's not awards. It's success is a very variable commodity in my. So I don't. Again, it's fascinating how my mind has meandered during your response, Claire, and your response, Megan. And I thought, this is, you know, it all came back flooding to me. So I thought, I'll share.
No, please do. I think these things are better unscripted anyway, you know. I think we prepared the script and we never actually stick to the script. It's better to be more authentic, I think. I think, you know, for the listeners and people engaging in the content, I think it's far better to just let it flow, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, have we any other takes on the focus, where the focus came from? Did we want to talk any more on this? Do we want to move on to another area to explore within the whole? Because it's quite a massive kind of area, really, and it kind of spans into so many different things. You know, we have imposter syndrome coming out here. We've got the emotional intelligence side of things. You know, there's so many different facets that you can kind of tap into this whole big word resilience. I mean, was there any other shares or takeaways that we wanted to ponder or discuss?
Boundaries it was something that I just jotted down there, because I think that was certainly a huge part of my journey, was learning when to say yes, when to say no, come out of that people pleasing phase, trying to placate everybody, trying to keep everybody happy. The reason that I focus so much on self-awareness is, well, I need to feel centered, grounded, in the eye of the storm, the the sandstorm.
Mm-hmm.
Being grounded in the middle of all of that. And so boundaries and it really are not a negotiable thing. It's really, really important in career progression, because it also demands respect. People, when you're able to say no and you're able to protect your time and energy, people respect that. You know, if you're available to everybody all the time, exhausting, really exhausting. So clear communication, strengthening relationships, all of that stuff comes through for me, the boundary setting, and honoring our own limits unashamedly, you know, as well, unapologetically, no guilt. We don't need to be guilty for protecting our time and energy. And that's very important in terms of not just leadership, but career growth. If you're going to grow in any way, then be very sure on your own time and energy boundaries.
I think that's a really important one, Claire, actually, because I think we're all guilty of the people pleasing and not setting proper boundaries and overdoing and leaving ourselves exhausted, which kind of leads to other things like the burnout and the stress that comes with that, not having enough time for yourself and not creating those kind of professional and personal boundaries, I think.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to talk any more in relation to boundaries or anything else that on the kind of topics that we've discussed so far?
I think that point that Claire's made about boundaries is interesting. That I think some of the people with groups and individuals that I coach who are in that middle leader section, I find they are very often some of the most stretched, and where resilience is massively important, because they're having to, as you say, Claire, they're having to sort of say yes to those who they report to, and they're trying to please those who are reporting to them. They're in a very difficult territory, and this is where I find that subject matter really starts to kick in and hone in, you know, because, you know, particularly for those people who see senior leadership as the next step, they want to get there as quickly as possible. It's almost like that painful process that they've got to go through. But for some of those people, they're going to stay in that middle area, perhaps, you know, and I do find that certainly in the last 4 or 5 years, I've found a lot of people I've been working with in that middle layer, middle managers, middle leaders. That's where this subject matter really does come in. A lot of the individual one-to-one coaching and team coaching sessions or development training sessions, it comes back to that subject matter almost consistently, really. They might not use the word resilience, but it's there. You know, and we talk about it a lot, really. So again, it just links into what Claire's mentioned.
I just wanted to add one extra point to that, Orla, around the boundary setting. Is I think also the boundaries are really important because people can misconstrue them and see boundaries as a way of stopping things and putting an end to something, when really boundaries help us to stay sustainable and to have longevity, especially, you know, if you're in high pressure environments or you're feeling a lot of stress and burnout and things like that. Those boundaries are what actually keeps us healthy versus blocking things or causing people to not be able to work with us. So if we can flip that perception and see boundaries as a good and a healthy way of working together, and it's really honesty, isn't it? Also, it's us being like completely honest about what we can and cannot handle, where we need space, so that people can also adjust their expectations and align with our abilities.
Do you know what, that is so crucial and so true. You know, it's almost kind of flipping it on its head. You know, I like the honesty bit, like you're being honest with others and yourself about what you can professionally handle, and obviously they kind of say that you shouldn't judge anyone unless you've walked in their shoes, and it's very true, because we all have differing amount of personal obstacles and journeys that we're on, you know, versus the kind of the professional ones as well. So yeah, that makes sense. And it's going to be different for different people.
Yeah, actually, Orla, you made me think of something else when you said that, how it's different for different people. I think, because I know each of us kind of focus on different areas of career development and where people are in their one thing I was working a lot with senior leaders in previous years was them bringing in the Gen Z and working together to understand the generational differences. And I think we can certainly argue that those of us that are millennials and X and beyond, that we would have had very different upbringings, we would have had very different career development. There were a lot different expectations and behaviors that we put up with because that's what we thought was the only option and how we had to behave in the workplace. And I think it's really refreshing to see the Gen Z has now come in and said, you know what, we don't want those things for ourselves. We want things different. We're setting boundaries. But I see that as a real piece, and it looks like the other coaches are saying yes, because I can see heads nodding, is really
everyone's resonating with that one.
It could be a whole podcast in itself, couldn't it?
Yeah.
But really the understanding of that it's not that Gen Z is lazy or doesn't want to do things, but it's that they're more aware. I would argue they're more aware of like what they can handle and what is sustainable for them versus other generations where we just kind of burn ourselves to the ground and are now in recovery at this point.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really valid point, Megan. I think we touched upon that in one of our discussions a few weeks ago with Soniya. We were talking about societal changes, weren't we? And the different kind of expectations in the workplace. Versus, for the different kind of Gen Z, Gen X, and the millennials and all the rest of it. And it is very different because, I'm a 50-year-old woman now, and I wouldn't have said no to my boss. I would have worked all the hours God sent. I would have stayed up late till 10 o'clock to make sure all those reports done, to make sure I had that interview list tickety-boo the next day. But you do find it's very different. I think we talked about it, didn't we, Megan, about I think some of your own experiences. I think if you want to share, I think you were explaining the work-life balance, I think, in one of the organizations you worked for, if I recall.
Yes. Yeah, I had a team where they were asking some of their younger employees, so their average age was around 26 in this organization, so they're really quite young population. And one of the senior managers asked them to come in a bit early for a meeting, and they said no, they had a yoga class. They couldn't skip the yoga. They weren't coming in early. The time another said I had to stay home because I need to look after my new puppy, and they were very firm in that they couldn't leave the dog. They were not going to work in the office that day, and you could see the senior leaders were shocked that they would even think of giving those excuses to them. But they were very confident and very firm that they did not need to come in the office that day. They had things covered from home. They weren't skipping their class. I had a complaint where someone was a partner in a law firm, and they wanted to do a conference call with the client in the morning, and the trainee took the call while they were on their bicycle cycling into the office, and that partner was absolutely fuming about it. He said that trainee should have been in the office taking notes, sitting next to me. The client should have seen both of us in the office. And the trainee disagreed and said, I joined the call. That's what you asked me to do. Whether I was on the bicycle or in the office, that makes no difference. So they're very confident in the way they want to work and how they want to manage their life. And I do think that that's going to require adjustments. I know that's requiring adjustments in leadership now. And I think that's the struggle that us and the older generations are having is it's really counterintuitive to everything that we were taught and trained to believe was correct. And we're now having to flip our mindset. And I think actually many of us deep down agree with them. But it can be hard. It can be hard to admit that you might have done things wrong for the last 20 years. And
we're just jealous. We're just jealous. I echo that though, because I think we in one of the leadership modules that I deliver, we do on the very last one, we do some action learning based around sort of current leadership challenges, and people bring their own to a forum and share. And more often in the last 4 or 5 years, those sorts of themes, Megan, have come to the fore about how do you lead and manage these scenarios, situations that maybe 10 years ago definitely wouldn't have been in the frame, but now certainly are. And it's interesting the strategies and the approaches that are coming out of that, because this is, it's a big change. It's a massive culture change, really. So so there's some anecdotal evidence that would back up what you've just said there, Megan.
Yeah, it's definitely things to ponder. I'm thinking of all sorts with, the different generations now, and obviously the technology that we've got now. You know, the AI was coming to mind when, you know, you were describing that guy on the bicycle when he should have been sitting taking notes with his boss. And I'm thinking, well, why isn't the notes? You know, wasn't he taking notes on Copilot or ChatGPT or yeah. So a whole different conversation. I think, to be honest, guys, we could probably nearly go and do another podcast on this. I think it's such a, you know, it's such a broad topic, which kind of leads on to so many different areas as well. But I think for the purpose of time, I think we'll probably wrap it up here, unless we've got any other insights or takeaways or any shares from any of you all. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add?
All good for me.
I think
Great, thank you so much. There is always so much, but yeah, you have got to draw the line. So yeah, I
think
love
we need to
another
make it
one
interesting.
though on
Yeah.
generation stuff and work-life balance and all of those things, because work-life balance now is not what work-life balance was 10, 20 years ago.
absolutely.
And I love this discussion. Yeah, thank you guys.
Maybe we can do another one then on work-life balance.
And the differences between the boomers and Gen Z and Gen X.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be a brilliant podcast. I think we need to factor that in for maybe September, October time.
Yes,
Absolutely. It should be a part of our podcast calendar. This is going to be very interesting because I come from a generation of millennials, but I'm currently with a cohort of all, you know, the Gen Z. And I know it's very difficult to merge together. Sometimes there'll be a clash of views and ideas, but the way when we merge together and we get the result, that's again quite excellent. So that's a very interesting topic.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, everyone, you know, for the insightful session. It was really insightful. I was just sitting there and then listening to you all with so many new ideas and the examples as well, you know, the way that you have experienced. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely onward afternoon. I hope the sun is shining wherever you are. Bye for now.